Welcome to Veterans Views Podcast from the JED TV studios on the campus of Purdue Northwest in Hammond, Indiana. Now here are your hosts, Connie Karras and Steve Bramer.
Welcome back, everybody. This is WJOB Veterans Views Podcast. I am your co-host, Connie Karras, along with the wonderful Steve Bramer. How are you, sir?
Good. Beautiful day.
Gorgeous day. You know, yesterday was about 81 degrees. And not that I'm complaining about that. Now we have just a kind of like a, mid-70s kind of a thing. And the lilacs are coming up for the first time in my neighbor's yard. I didn't see them first. I smelled them first when I walked out my front door. So you know that it's spring when those have sprung. And it's such a short time that those lilacs are out there.
I love that.
Aren't they wonderful?
They are
yes,
wonderful. They
are wonderful. Well, we have today a very, very special and important topic to discuss. And with us, we have someone who is going to speak her heart and her soul authentically, and hopefully we can have a really wonderful discussion and open some eyes here, some eyes and hearts. But today's topic is transgender personnel in the United States military. And as all of us know, right now, with the new administration, with the Donald Trump being inaugurated on January 20th, shortly thereafter there were some executive orders that have been addressing transgender folks in the military, transgender troops. And it's a very controversial subject. There was an executive order 14183 called Prioritizing Military Excellence and Readiness that was issued January 27th, 2025. And that order basically is stating that transgender troops cannot serve. And so what we're going to do is have a very wonderful discussion. We'll get back to that order later. But what we're going to do right now is we're going to play a video interview of a person named Commander Emily Schilling.
We are hearing from a major veterans group criticizing President Trump's ban on transgender troops from serving in the military. The CEO of Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America says that the president's order tells service members their sacrifice is not valued. Last night, we spoke to Republican Congressman Dan Crenshaw about this, and he argued also that he believes transgender people are not fit to serve.
I'm saying by definition, if you have transitioned into a different gender, you are not meeting our medical standards.
Right, but that's your opinion.
You're creating, no, it's not an opinion.
But then how are there trans people serving in the military right now? Tonight, the president's latest ban is being challenged in a court in a lawsuit that was brought by 6 transgender service members and 2 transgender individuals who wanted to enlist. My source on this tonight is the U.S. Navy commander, Emily Schilling, who has done 2 tours of duty in Iraq and Afghanistan as a Navy pilot, was awarded 3 air medals and an award for superior airmanship as well. She transitioned years ago and has since been promoted with merit. She's also the president of Sparta, which is an advocacy organization made of transgender troops. And I want to thank you so much for being here. Just this order that came out, and we finally got to read the text of it this morning. You have almost 2 decades in your naval career. What is your view of this?
Well, it hit me kind of hard. You know, I've dedicated about 19 and a half years of service. It was my dream to join and fly for the Navy since I was little. I did the 2 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, 60 combat missions. I got a lot of value at it and a lot of self-identity out of it. Later, I went on to be a test pilot and then the meritorious promotions. I have been at the pinnacle of naval aviation. I think I'm proof standing here that, we are qualified to serve.
And when you see this and the language of it, I was reading through this because the congressman and I were kind of going back and forth on this last night, and it says that, quote, an adoption of a gender identity inconsistent with an individual's sex conflicts with a soldier's commitment to an honorable, truthful, and disciplined lifestyle, even in one's personal life. What is it like for you to hear those words?
Well, first off, all I want to do is keep serving. I've done that almost 20 years. I want to keep going. I have no desire to get out. And the feedback that I've had from prior to transition to after is that it's made me actually a better leader, able to connect with my people more and in a more authentic way because I can meet them wherever they are.
And so when you hear this idea that because you've gone through that you are not fit to serve, as the congressman was stating, saying that you wouldn't be able to be up to the standards. I mean, you know what the standards are and what those requirements are and what that requires from you. What is your response to that?
Yeah, Caitlin, there's a lot of disinformation out there and a lot of talking points on it, but I'm one of the first naval aviators to regain my flight clearance post-transition. And what that means is the Navy was rightfully medically conservative. I'm going to go fly a $100 million aircraft, the F-18, like you saw in Top Gun 2. So they ran me through every psychological evaluation, every physical evaluation they could think of. And at the end of the day, there was no reason to keep me out of the cockpit. We see this with all of the troops that are deployed across the world today, already embedded in combat units. We have lawyers, doctors, special forces, rangers, and they're all there today. If we yank them out, it leaves critical holes that are going to take decades to fill.
So we dug in on this with the congressman. I want you to listen to what he said about that exactly and the test that you do go through.
I know what war is like, and I know what it takes to deploy. I was not allowed to deploy for vision issues. Now, what if you need to be on a bunch of medications and your entire body has been changed radically into another gender? It makes it very difficult to deploy you into the places that we need to deploy you.
You're basically arguing you're proof that they're wrong.
I am proof. My total med downtime, as they put it, was about a month. That's in line with somebody who has minor knee surgery. We have individuals who go through as much a transition as they want without ever being down. It's really just, bad gouge.
And we've heard from people like the new Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, talk about recruitment and how they need to improve and how the numbers are down and they're trying to appeal to people. So what does it say when an order like this comes out saying, even if you want to serve, we're saying you can't, at a time when we're saying we're also at low levels of recruitment?
Yeah, so the executive order actually just asked the SecDef to generate new policy. And if you read his most recent memo to the troops, the last line says that he supports all members and all families of the armed forces. I hope he stands by those words.
What would you, if you could see Defense Secretary Hegseth and talk about your own service and what you've been through, he also served, what would you say?
I think that would be a really wonderful conversation. I would welcome it. When people get to know somebody who's transgender, we're able to kind of change the narrative. I think there's a lot of misconception of what it's like to live in my shoes or live in my boots, as it was.
Commander, it was so great to have you on. Thank you for coming on and sharing that perspective following that interview last night.
Thank you so much.
I really appreciate it.
Okay, so that was Commander Emily Schilling. Some pretty powerful stuff right there. I want to introduce to you our guest today, Amy Kay. Amy, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
We're doing well. Thank you for being here, and tell us a little bit about yourself before we start discussing things and what we heard with this interview.
Okay. My name's Amy Kay. I served 8 years in the United States Navy. I was a CB. I've been to I'm stationed in Gulfport, Mississippi, Norfolk, Virginia. Been overseas, obviously, to Iraq, Thailand, Guam, Rota, Spain, Puerto Rico. There's a couple other places I'm forgetting. It's been a while. But I have been transitioned almost 28 years now, and been living a pretty good life until this year, when the new administration decided to step in and put a lot of, I don't want to say red tape on us to make life a little bit more difficult.
Before we comment on this video that we just watched, this interview of Commander Emily Schilling, I'm going to read the executive order, and I'm just going to ask everybody here to comment on this. I'm going to read one highlighted section, and this was discussed in the video that we just heard and saw. I'm going to highlight one section and then read the order, and then let's have some discussion on this. This is from Executive Order 141 83, Prioritizing Military Excellence and Readiness. It is a order issued by the Trump administration on January 27th, 2025. Quote, consistent with the military mission and long-standing Department of Defense policy, expressing a false quote-unquote gender identity divergent from an individual's sex cannot satisfy the rigorous standards necessary for military service. Beyond the hormonal and surgical medical interventions involved, adoption of a gender identity inconsistent with an individual's sex conflicts with a soldier's commitment to an honorable, truthful, and disciplined lifestyle, even in one's own personal life. A man's assertion that he is a woman and his requirement that others honor this falsehood is not consistent with the humility and selflessness required of a service member, unquote. And here is, I'm just going to read the entire full executive order so we understand what it states before we comment. By the authority vested in me as President by the Constitution of the laws of the United States of America and as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the United States, and to ensure the readiness and effectiveness of our armed forces, it is hereby ordered that the United States military has a clear mission to protect the American people and our homeland as the world's most lethal and effective fighting force. Success in this existential mission requires a singular focus on developing the requisite warrior ethos, and the pursuit of military excellence cannot be diluted to accommodate political agendas or other ideologies harmful to unit cohesion. Recently, however, the armed forces have been afflicted with radical gender ideology to appease activists unconcerned with the requirements of military service, like physical and mental health, selflessness, and unit cohesion. Long-standing Department of Defense policy instruction 6130.03 provides that it is the policy of the Department of Defense to ensure that service members are, quote, free of medical conditions or physical defects that may reasonably be expected to require excessive time lost from duty for necessary treatment or hospitalization, unquote. And as a result, many mental and physical health conditions are incompatible with active duty, from conditions that require substantial medication or medical treatment to bipolar and related disorders, eating disorders, suicidality, and prior psychiatric hospitalization. Consistent with the military mission and long-standing Department of Defense policy, expressing a false quote-unquote gender identity divergent from an individual's sex cannot satisfy the rigorous standards necessary for military service. And then beyond the hormonal and surgical medical interventions involved, adoption of a gender identity inconsistent with an individual's sex conflicts with a soldier's commitment to an honorable, again, useful, truthful, and disciplined lifestyle, even in one's own personal life. A man's assertion that he is a woman and his requirement that others honor his falsehood is not consistent with the humility and selflessness required of a service member. That's the excerpt I had read at the beginning. For the sake of our nation and the patriotic Americans who volunteer to serve it, military service must be reserved for those mentally and physically fit for duty. The armed forces must adhere to high mental and physical health standards to ensure our military can deploy, fight, and win, including in austere conditions and without the benefit of routine medical treatment or special provisions. I want to address this, and we heard this in the interview with Commander Schilling. I want to address this, that this executive order purports that the adoption of a gender identity inconsistent with an individual's sex, birth sex, biological sex, conflicts with a soldier's commitment to an honorable, truthful, and disciplined lifestyle, even when in one's own personal life. How do you respond to that, Amy?
Well, first off, we're talking about a man sitting in the Oval Office that dodged the draft how many times because he said he had bone spurs? And if you are a felon, you are not allowed to serve the United States military, but you can run and lead the United States military. That one I'm having a little bit hard time accepting. How could somebody like that be put into place? As far as sex and gender identity, we're all born asexual from the beginning. When you're first conceived, we don't develop into male or female after a certain point. And, if you want to get down to it, as far as the science side of things go, we have XXY, we have XXYY, XYXY, and so on and so forth. There's so many different variations of gender. How do you explain intersex people, born with both organs? Are they unfit to serve? Because, they're born that way. One could argue as well that someone like myself who is trans, your brain develops as female. I am male to female. My brain developed as female. I got more estrogen in the second part of gestation than a male should have. And even though my organs at birth were male, doesn't mean that my brain didn't develop as female. And, a little question I like to throw out there for people to kind of understand a little bit is, when did you decide that you're a male, or when did you decide that you're a female in your life? And most people said, well, I don't. I just always was. Okay, well, it's no different for us. We just had to sit and think about how bad we want this. How bad do you want to transition? Because I want to tell you, it's not easy to transition and accept the hate from a lot of the people in this world because of the misinformation that's been dealt out. I try to take the time and educate people, and I think the key thing here is education. The more we educate the people about us, the less issue we're going to have, and the less information can be spread. I think this current administration is trying to remove that from schools. They consider it gender ideology. The only ideology here is the people in charge are trying to make it this way. They're trying to push their agenda and their belief, not everybody's belief. I think this executive order is totally disrespectful to many people, not only to just transgender people, but to women and men as well. Because if you're going to serve your country and you're physically able and mentally able to serve, why are we stopping these veterans from serving? That part I never will understand. And it all comes down to one thing: hate. And they don't see it in their eyes as anything other than hate. We're not part of them. We're not a male. We're not a female. They don't look at us as either. So it's easier for them to say, well, this is gender ideology, so we're just going to go ahead and attack them. We're like 1.3% of the population, so let's attack a small portion of the community. That I will never understand.
Steve?
So I'm going to look at it from another perspective, okay?
Okay.
And I think a majority of people kind of fall into this category where they don't really understand. They don't know. They've never really been exposed to it. So they don't really understand the nuances in it. And I think one part, Connie actually brought it to my attention today when we were talking earlier. And when when you first hear about this situation, it kind of gets thrown out there like transgender people are in the military proclaiming that they want this. I want this. This is about me. I want my pronouns. I want this. And this morning, Connie, when we were talking, she's like, these are just regular service members that want to just be left alone. They want to just go about their day, stay under the radar. They actually excel because they don't want people's eyes on them, which I think is how it really is in the military.
Higher standard.
Yeah, it is a higher standard, but they also are not about It's not just about them. That's not what the reality is when you're in there. It's portrayed in the media like that's how it is. And you got a lot of veterans that when we were in, it wasn't about it was about the team. It was about, my buddy. I would look out for your back and you look out for mine, right? So when you hear it portrayed in the media the way it has been, you do get this opinion like, well, why are they any different? I didn't get that special consideration when I was in. I didn't get to choose stuff like that. And I think that's where you coming on today and expressing your actual experiences can show people that that's not how it is when they're in the military. That it's not just about that one individual. They're there for the team as well. You see what I'm saying? So
exactly.
And I think that's one of the things that needs to get put out there is the reality of situations. The reality of what's really happening out there. There's a lot of people that think they don't care. You want to be a man, a woman, whatever. As long as you're not affecting their lives, who cares, right? I was telling Connie, I'm not going to go into names, but I've dealt with this in my own home and with my own kids. And, okay, what do you want to do? All right. Well, as long as you maintain your grades, as long as you maintain your integrity about what you're doing, I don't want you to go out there and start doing crazy stuff. No, as long as you maintain the way the proper way of doing things. Hey, do what think however you want. Your grades start slipping. Well, now we have a problem, right? That's how it kind of is, and that's how it was with me. So, I do have a question. Okay. So one of the arguments out there is that, when you're transitioning, it's a process, and you know how it is in the military. You got to be deployable, right? So I'm reading that it could take up to 2 years for some people to recover from transitioning. Is that true? Like, does it take that long, or is it shorter amount of time?
Well, that's kind of a loaded question. For everybody, it's different. It takes a while to transition, but here's the thing: once you start your hormone replacement therapy, as long as you have that medication with you, it's not going to affect your job. It's like anything else. You get up, you take your medication, you go to work, you come home, and you go to bed. So, it's not going to affect your time in the military. It's not going to do anything different other than the fact that, okay, if you're male to female, you're going to develop breasts, you're going to develop a female body from the hormones. And vice versa for male. They're going to develop facial hair. They're going to develop more muscle. They're going to get stronger. They're going to get a bigger build. But there's nothing that's superficial that is going to keep you from performing anything in the military. It's not going to stop you from doing your day-to-day job.
Okay.
So I disagree with that.
So then the transitioning is not, it's not just the surgery. The transitioning is the hormonal therapy. It's, there's more to it than just that. Correct?
Yeah. Now, as far as surgery, you're looking at 6 months usually to recover from that. Depends upon what surgery you get too. There's a couple different gender affirming surgeries you can do. But as far as gender reassignment surgery, you're looking at 6 months total recovery. But, in the military, how many times have you been on light duty and you still performed a desk job? You still did something. So, if you had to be deployed, you could still deploy. There's still things for you to do until you're off light duty. So it's a short amount of time. It doesn't take 2 years to recover from surgery.
Okay.
So I think an important point to make is transgender people have been entering the military, maybe not legally, since the Civil War. In serving, many have lost their lives. Many have served, they have had to do it under the radar. Since the Civil War, many women during the Civil War were disguising themselves actually as men to enlist as soldiers and fight in war. We have combat veterans, transgender combat veterans in this country who have fought for our country, for our freedom, since the Civil War. And all throughout the history of our country, there is even a person named Albert Cashier, born Jenny Irene Hodgers from Belvedere, Illinois. A local person. He enlisted on August 6, 1862 and served in the Union Army as a man. His identity remained unknown throughout the entirety of his service, and he kept the identity of Albert Cashier for the remainder of his life. And then it was not until 1911, while working as a handyman, that he was struck by an automobile and fractured his leg. And then when a physician was called, it was discovered that Albert was in fact born a woman. Shortly after his injury, he was admitted into the Soldiers and Sailors Home in Quincy, Illinois, which is in northwest Illinois. I've been there. It's actually a beautiful, beautiful community. And where in his application he gave his birth name as Jenny Hodgers and stated he was born in Ireland on December 25th, 1844. And that at the home, only the doctor knew of his true identity, okay? And he was able to continue to live as Albert Cashier along with other patients in the home. But then when his mental health became too deteriorated for the home to adequately take care of him, he was sent to an insane asylum at Watertown. At that asylum, Albert was forced to wear dresses and accept the identity he was born with, Jenny Hodgers, until his death in 1915. However, he was buried. Albert Cashier was buried with full military honors, but as a man. Okay? So, and part of this, the reason I'm bringing that up is part of this executive order basically is really not taking into account that transgender is not a sex. And transgender, just the virtue of being transgender, which, as we'll talk about later, has occurred since the dawn of time, does not make a person dishonorable or lacking in integrity. And there is a lot of science to back up that this is not a mental illness. So, in fact, it's been removed from the list of mental illnesses in the IDC code in 2019. But, there is also another executive order that states, presidential executive order under the Trump administration that states that there are only two sexes. And actually, we're conflating things. We're confusing things here. While there many. This is a discussion for another time. Many cultures throughout history have, as you had mentioned, Amy, there are intersex people. There are three sexes. There are more than two sexes. But even if we were to state that, let's go upon the supposition that there are only two sexes right now for the sake of this argument, what does that have to do with a person feeling like they are not gendered properly in the sex in which they were born? So to have an executive order state that there are only two sexes in the United States of America throws out a lot of scientific evidence and historic evidence that that simply is not true. But here's where we stand right now. Here's where we stand, just so everybody knows. And I talked to you about this, Amy, a little bit yesterday. I don't know how long this is going to stand, but there is a federal judge that has indefinitely, without a date of ending of this order, indefinitely blocked President Trump's ban on transgender service members. It's a ruling issued by U.S. District Judge Anna Reyes, who said the administration cannot enforce the ban, which was actually slated to take effect later in March, at the end of last month. So here's what she said about this this is part of what she said in her ruling. Indeed, the cruel irony is that thousands of transgender service members have sacrificed, some risking their lives, to ensure for others the very equal protection rights the military ban seeks to deny them. And the judge said she was pausing her preliminary injunction to give the administration time to appeal it to the D.C. Court of Appeals. But anyway, so that's where we stand. We don't know how long that blocking of that injunction is going to take place, but we'll see how this all comes to pass. But throughout history, there have been transgender people, and throughout history, there have been transgender people not only serving in the armed forces of the history of the United States, but in other countries. As of 2025, there are, I think, 31 countries that allow transgender troops to serve openly. They are Argentina, Australia, Austria, Belgium, Bolivia, Brazil, Canada, Chile, Czechia, Denmark, Estonia, Finland, France, Germany, Greece, Ireland, Israel, Japan, Mexico, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Norway, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland, Ukraine, and for the moment, this is equivocal. We'll see how this happens. Is the United States of America. Cuba and Thailand reportedly allowed transgender service in a limited capacity. So, thoughts on all of this, Steve?
So I want to go back to the, when you said it changed, because it did. It changed in 2019. Mm-hmm. It used to be called gender identity disorder, and then they changed it to gender dysphoria, and then the change they made in definition was now it's a distress because of the gender, like the confusion of it, right? So like it's not that you want to be a different sex, that's the disorder. It's the distress from wanting that, right? That's
dealing with the societal pressures and the enculturations.
Yeah.
Right.
So that kind of reasons then, okay, if you're joining the military and you have high blood pressure, right? So you don't have diabetes yet. You're still below that mark. They're still going to prevent you from joining until you fix that, because you're it's a probability, a higher probability, for when you go in. So one thing that's concerning to me is, when you look at the suicide rate among veterans, it's like 2 times that of the general public. When you look at the suicide rate among transgender veterans, now you're talking 19 times what it is. But, and that's concerning.
That's very concerning. That's alarm bells, 5 alarm.
Yeah.
5 alarm fire right there.
And I'm not going to say that should mean we shouldn't let them join, right? I think that a broader issue then needs to be talked about, because is it higher because of the gender dysphoria, or is it higher because of you're being a veteran? There's just so many aspects to that can be concerning.
Can I add on to that?
Yes.
Yeah, please, by all means.
Okay, I think the part you're trying to understand is the why suicide happens among transgender people, and a lot of that is the fact that they are not on hormones at the time, and until they get started on hormone replacement therapy, they don't have that gender dysphoria anymore once they start the hormones. It's kind of like, you eat like 5 or 6 different foods, you're hungry for something, you don't know what it is, and then all of a sudden you find that one thing and it's like, oh, that was it, I'm good. That's about what it's like when you start taking hormones and before you take hormones. You have that hunger, but you can't quite quench it because you don't know what you want. So when you start taking the hormones, it lessens that burden of the suicide. A lot of the people with gender dysphoria experience that. There's people that have body dysmorphia as well with the gender dysphoria. So it kind of can go hand in hand with what you're saying. Some of that is also if they have served in a combative role, that will add on to it. It only makes it worse. So that's where you're getting your numbers at with the suicides.
So I kind of know what you're saying, because I was feeling real tired for I think it was like 2 years. My endurance, my strength, I was just always tired, and my testosterone was immensely low. So I started taking testosterone, and it was kind of like that. It was kind of like, oh my God, like I feel so much better. Like it was kind of amazing, you know. So I get that. I can understand that. So then, what would prevent you from being able to take the hormonal therapy?
What's going to prevent me is
not you, but like
administration attacking the Veterans Administration right now and wanting to remove gender affirming care, which for somebody like myself is very deadly.
Okay, I get what you're saying now. Okay, so the VA now, they cover it, but they might not. Is that what you're saying?
The Secretary Collins had put out an order that said that if you were on gender affirming care before, they would continue most of those people. But anybody new coming in to get hormone replacement therapy and any gender affirming care period, they won't do. Okay. But then I just read in an article, I forget, it was like a week ago, and they said they were going to completely remove that. And then they come out with HHS, Human Health Services, RFK Jr. passed, I forget what it was exactly, but it's a tattletale sheet. So if you know of a doctor that is treating anybody with gender dysphoria, you fill out this paper and send it into them, and they will go after the doctor.
Yeah, see, I don't agree with that.
So
you should never restrict a doctor on what he can treat.
A lot of that is happening in the civilian world as well. When there's gender affirming surgery going on with in families, and they're taking their child to another state, there are people tattling on those doctors as well. It's a problem. It's a problem. But I did find the article that you're talking about, Amy. This is from April 24th, 2025, and this is a Politico article, okay? And it's just so I can cite this so that those that are accessing this podcast can also research it as well. I just want to cite this article. It's by Jack Detsch, DETSCH, Paul McCleary, and Kyle Cheney. It's dated April 24th, 2025. It's a Political article entitled Pentagon to Resume Medical Care for Transgender Troops. The Pentagon will resume gender-affirming care for transgender service members. The memo says the Defense Department is returning to the Biden-era medical policy for transgender service members due to a court order that struck down Hegseth's restrictions as unconstitutional. The administration, of course, is appealing the move, but a federal appeals court in California denied the department's effort to halt the policy while its challenge is pending. So as a result, the administration is barred from removing transgender service members or restricting their medical care, a priority of Donald Trump and Hegseth. The administration insisted its restrictions were geared toward people experiencing medical challenges related to quote-unquote gender dysphoria, but two federal judges said in March that the policy was a thinly veiled ban on transgender people that violated the Constitution. Now, of course, the Trump administration did ask the Supreme Court to allow the Pentagon to ban transgender service members while legal battles continue to play out. It'll be interesting to see if SCOTUS makes any kind of opinion on that, makes any finding on that. But both judges ordered the military to refrain from forcing out more than 1,000 transgender troops and to resume providing for their medical care, including surgical procedures and voice and hormone therapy. The memo was the latest move by the Pentagon to comply with these orders. But it does present another headache for Hegseth, Defense Department Secretary Hegseth, who has made culture war issues such as changing recruitment standards and reinstating the ban a key piece of his effort to make the military more lethal. Now, let's talk about what is the cost? The Trump administration has claimed that it's an exorbitant cost. And let's look at what the cost is. Let's break it down by decade. What are the costs of publicly funded gender-affirming surgeries in the U.S. military? So the costs of publicly funded gender-affirming surgeries, particularly within the context of the United States military, of course, has been a subject of analysis and debate for decades. But here's a comprehensive summary. Here's the Palm Center analysis 2015. It's an independent research institute, and it estimated in 2015 that the costs of gender-affirming surgeries and related health care for transgender service members would amount to no less than 0.14% of the total military health care budget. Okay? Rand Corporation, 2016 study. The Rand Corporation conducted a comprehensive study to estimate the costs of providing gender-affirming health care to transgender service members. This study estimated that the total annual costs for gender-affirming surgeries would range from $2.4 million to $8.4 million. Okay.
Overall?
Yes.
Overall?
Yeah.
Okay.
Department of Defense this is the Department of Defense internal review from 2018. Okay, that estimated that the total cost of gender-affirming surgeries for service members since the policy change allowing transgender individuals to serve openly was approximately $2 million. And this figure naturally represents a very small fraction of the Department of Defense annual comprehensive health care budget. New England Journal of Medicine, 2017, they published an analysis estimating the cost of these surgeries, gender-affirming surgeries for transgender service members would amount to approximately $4.2 million annually. Small fraction of the total Department of Defense budget. Hartzler estimate, 2017. Here's another thing. I want to talk about Representative Vicki Hartzler. She's a Republican out of Missouri. She claimed during a congressional session in 2017 that gender-affirming surgeries would cost the military up to $1.3 billion over 10 years. And this figure is widely criticized and It's just not so based upon the other independent.
Yeah, that's high. That's very high compared to the other one.
Well, especially when the Department of Defense is certainly the go-to with this, right? And is not saying any type of a figure that is so conflated as that. The Department of Defense data from 2016 to 2021. So, between January 1st, 2016 and May 14th, 2021, the Department of Defense reportedly spent approximately, now this is, again, 2016, this is 5 years, $15 million to provide gender-affirming care, including both surgical and non-surgical treatments, to 1,892 service members. The expenditure included about $3.1 million for surgeries. That is Department of Defense data. This is not a congresswoman with a political agenda stating that it's almost $2 billion. Excuse me, almost $1.5 billion over a 10-year period. Now, then there's the We're going to come up to the present day here almost. Congressional Research Service report of 2023. That noted the cost of expanding TRICARE coverage to include gender-affirming surgical care for active duty service members was estimated to be between $2.4 million and $8.4 million annually. And this estimate aligns with all of the previous studies that I just discussed going back to 2015 and reflects ongoing consideration regarding health care coverage for transgender service members. I could go on and on. Needless to say, it's just not backed up by data by the Department of Defense itself that we have that this is an exorbitant cost to the military. Amy, if I may, how much did your gender-affirming surgeries cost in your treatment?
Let's see. I did that like 25 years ago, and I wanted to say it was like right around $48,000 back in the day.
Okay.
Did insurance cover any of that?
Yeah. Did you have insurance?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes. Covered it 100% actually.
Okay. That's
wonderful.
Awesome.
That's wonderful. Not everyone is that blessed. I
think I kind of want to throw out a catch-22 that I've heard another argument out there. So it's not. So what I guess what I'm hearing is that it's not a disorder, right? But
no.
One of the things that I heard was that, well, if it's not a disorder, then it's considered an elective surgery. Mm-hmm. Just like insurance isn't going to cover electives from other things, right? So it's like, okay, so then which one is it? Mm-hmm. Right? Is it is it not a disorder and then it's an elective that shouldn't be covered by insurance, or is it a disorder and then it should be covered by insurance? You see what I'm saying?
Amy?
Yeah. When you talk disorder, that could break into a lot of things. In a sense, it is an elective surgery, but to help the gender dysphoria, it's not really disorder, it's dysphoria. You have to correct the things with your body to make it more of what you're going for. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I get
what you're saying.
You're trying to look as female as you can, and do the best that you can, and that makes you happier in the end. Like for instance, you were asking about my surgeries. I actually did a facial feminization surgery where I did a brow shave and an eye contour the end of January, and that's something I'd always wanted to do. Never done it, never had the time to do it, and glad I did it. And I feel much better about myself from doing that surgery. You can consider it an elective surgery, but then again, okay, what about women that want to have their breasts enlarged? Mm-hmm. Or what about men that want the women to have the breasts enlarged? Is that a disorder? Or is it an elective? Mm-hmm. Is it something you want? Mm-hmm. So, it's no different than that either way.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah,
does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. And another thing, too, and we heard this in the interview of Emily Schilling on CNN at the beginning of the show, the downtime, that's another assertion that's being made by the administration, that there's going to be a lot of downtime, that people are going to be away from their units and not be able to be efficient members of their units, when I think Commander Emily Schilling said, I think it was about the same amount of time that knee surgery would some type of any type of a medical procedure, a basic medical procedure, a surgery, non-complicated one, would take. I think she said 30 days.
Pretty much.
Yes, yeah. Right.
And that's what I was reading, that it, like the initial surgery, it's 4 to 6 weeks with the recovery from the surgery. But then you see other things that are saying that it could take up to 2 years, which I guess I'm assuming is like with complications, like you just said, in different infections and stuff like that happen afterwards, But okay.
Well, let's look at the cost of on service members of serving with regard to their overall health and their mental health. Now, there was part of that order. It was stating that I'll go right back to it and read it. What had concerned me, it was mentioning. Here we go. As a result, many mental and physical health conditions are incompatible with active duty, from conditions that require substantial medication or medical treatment to bipolar and related disorders, eating disorders, suicidality, and prior psychiatric hospitalization. Let's talk about that for a minute, because as we all know, serving in the military causes service-related trauma. A lot of us have depression. A lot of us have suicidal ideation. A lot of us have attempted suicide. That's why we have disability claims. We have all types of situations where we need medical treatment, comprehensive medical treatment for these things that may that threaten our very health, and we need help for those things. That's why the medical system, and that's why we go to doctors in the VA, and we go doctors in the private sector. So it makes no sense to me to put that in there. Are they saying then that troops that have suicidal ideation or have committed tried to take their lives, attempted suicide, that they then should not be, that should disqualify them from serving in the military? As we know, that's not the case, because people are repeatedly deployed. They incur repeated moral injuries. They have conditions, pre-existing conditions prior to deployments that exacerbate those conditions, no matter what they may be. There's an array of them, but we keep redeploying them. So I find it difficult to understand why those particular examples were put in there when we know very well that we keep deploying people who have all kinds of medical conditions, whether it be physical and or mental, and we keep them in the service. We don't throw them out. If we were to discharge people that, according to this, would disqualify them from service, we wouldn't have a military force. Thoughts?
Exactly. And let's talk about PTSD. Mm-hmm. How many active duty veterans right now are serving with PTSD and still combatable? Mm-hmm. They're still able to deploy. They're still able to do what they got to do because they're getting the medical care that they need. Mm-hmm. They're getting the help they need. It's no different if you're transgender, if you're female, if you're male. It doesn't matter. We're all the same. We're all getting care. We're all getting treated. I totally disagree with the examples they use in that executive order because, there's so many different conditions out there that people are still serving, but they're just going, it's just a way for them to attack transgender again and make it look like we're a weak person that can't be combative. And that's not it. We're very capable of doing our job.
And I think you're right. I think that is the focus of what they're trying to say, is that it is not helping with the lethality of the military. And, they do use examples that I don't think really prove their point when it comes to some of this, But I go back to, a lot of vets don't know. They don't know what the, I don't know. They don't know. They don't know. They don't know what it really means to have somebody that's transgender in their unit, right? And I think they look at it from that point of view of like when they were in, how would that have been? How would that have changed their particular service, right? Especially a lot of these Vietnam vets, okay? And you look at it and you think of how would have a transgender been back during the Vietnam War? And, that was a different time. Like, I could definitely see that being a problem to some people and then them, like, making things bad, So I think, some people just come from a different era and don't really understand what, the change that things have been. Like I said, I'm trying to be an open-minded with this, and that's why I wanted to have a curt conversation with you on what they are really saying out there, and if that is true when it comes to some of these aspects, like how long does it take to transition? I mean, like I said, we're hearing 2 years, a year, but is that reality? Is that really how it is? Right. And like the colonel there, I think she said colonel, right?
She's commander. Naval commander.
Naval commander. Yeah. She was only down for a month. Mm-hmm. So that's a lot different than what we hear, other people hear from the news and the media.
Absolutely. I'm sure that's going not only with regard to this topic, but in general, the media is all about hype and ratings. They're going to sensationalize things, and we really need to do our fact checking. We need to fact check. That's part of the problem. So there's so much information, dis and misinformation out there. But even if it takes a year or two to transition, which would, my goodness, for a lifetime. That to me is not even a long time for something so major and especially something where from all ends of society you're getting pushback anyway. That doesn't seem like a long time to me. But let's also remember with the examples of all the other medical conditions that we have occurring in humanity, not just in troops in the military. We have a lot of chronic medical conditions that require ongoing medical care year after year after year after year, not just acute medical care. How does that make... There are conditions that would require I think, a much larger expenditure of medical costs than transgender. If you were to do a breakdown, we can talk about this in another podcast and look at the numbers, look at the costs. We don't have all that information, that data in front of us now. But, I want to talk about something else that clearly has been happening here, too, because I mentioned toward the beginning of the show, that transgender people have existed since the dawn of time. And in many cultures, in many countries, all over the world, it's not been an issue for a lot of societies. But for the United States of America, there seems to be a kind of a puritanical spin on this, and religion plays a big part of this. As I had mentioned, there are 30 countries now that allow openly serving transgender people to serve in the military. And I named what they were. Many of those countries have different major religions of the world. They don't adhere, their primary religions are not Christianity. As I had mentioned, Israel. Israel is one of the countries that permit full integration of transgender folks in the military, and they serve honorably, and there's no issue with them. And I'd like to also point out, when did you hear the last time in any kind of mainstream media where you could fact check it that a transgender person was doing something disruptive in the military or attacking someone in a bathroom? You don't hear about that because it's not happening, and that's another example, Steve, of where the media is blowing up something that is not happening. If anything, Amy, correct me if I'm wrong here, but when you go into a bathroom, probably the last thing that you're thinking about is what's going on in the stall next door. You just want to take care of your business and leave like any other human being. Am I right?
That's pretty much it.
Right.
I mean, I don't know how many women I've sit there and thought, they look at my hair, they look at my makeup, they're like, you have to teach me how to do your makeup, or I love your hair, or I love that lip gloss, something like that. Just general conversation as you're washing your hands to leave. But as far as going in the bathroom, you take care of business and you leave. I've never had an issue in the bathroom. I've heard of other trans having an issue. I've yet to experience that, and I hope I never do, knock on wood. But sadly, there are several bathroom bills back on the docket again.
Mm-hmm. So I want to bring up something else, too, that I think is making up the political, that nothing occurs in a vacuum. And just to go back in time to the first administration, the Trump administration, thoughts on this. On July 10th, 2017, the Trump administration hosted a gathering. This is during Trump's first administration, of religious leaders at the Eisenhower Executive Office building for a 6-hour session. The event included briefings from White House staff and appearances by high-ranking officials, including Vice President Mike Pence. Russell Moore, a religious advisor to President Trump, noted that discussion also touched on the issue of transgender military service members. Now, Tony Perkins, the president of the Family Research Council, advocated for a ban on transgender individuals serving in the military, though some participants expressed disagreement in that meeting. So, later, on July 13th, 2017, Representative Vicky Jo Hartzler, I had mentioned Hartzler, that independent study that claimed that $1.3 billion was the expenditure over a 10-year period for gender-affirming surgeries, which every other independent study basically said was not factual. Anyway, Representative Hartzler on July 13, 2017 introduced House Amendment 183, an amendment to ban on funding gender reassignment surgeries and medical treatment for transgender military personnel. Now, that was voted down 209 to 214 when 24 Republicans joined 190 Democrats in opposing the proposal. They opposed it. The Republican Party. But before the vote, Secretary Mattis called Hartzler to ask her to withdraw the amendment. That was the Secretary General Matisse. He had asked her to withdraw the amendment. Now, after the amendment was defeated, Representative Trent Franks, Republican Arizona, stated, "It seems to me, and all due respect to everyone, that if somebody wants to come to the military potentially to risk their life to save their country, they should at least probably decide whether they're a man or a woman before they do that." So that shows actually the ignorance. Amy, you mentioned during the show a few minutes prior that we don't wake up wondering, deciding whether we want to be a man or a woman. That's not something that we give any kind of conscious thought to. I mean, it is, we are who we are. We are born as we are. We are who we are, and we identify who we are. So let's go fast forward in a little more. What I'm trying to say, I think, is that here. Let's go a little fast forward a little bit further to when President Trump nominated an Army veteran, Tennessee State Senator Mark Green, as his first choice for Secretary of the Army. So he was criticized for prior remarks he had made before the Chattanooga Tea Party in September 2006, including the statement that if you poll the psychiatrists, this is getting back to whether this is an illness, disorder or not, they're going to all tell you that transgender is a disease. So, people in positions of power, this is going back to the first administration, are claiming things that are not consistent with what the American Medical Association is even claiming. Anyway, he withdrew because of a lot of flack on both ends because of that very controversial comment that he made. He withdrew his nomination. Okay, so anyway, thoughts on all that? Just thoughts on all that, what I just said. Amy, what do you think about... I think there's a little bit of we bring our enculturation, and when you have a politician who has a certain religious enculturation, making policy or being appointed by the President of the United States, that's not based on science, that's not based on medical science, that's not based on advice from medical professionals. Where do you go with that?
I've heard you say it 3 or 4 times now, and a lot of the politicians they're making these claims are using religious beliefs. Well, the Bible itself that they claim to be speaking from, they seem to forget about the Roman centurion who approached Jesus himself for his ill Pius, who was dying. Okay, Pius is a Greek word for effeminate male or a male servant. And back then, it was also known as a eunuch. And if you look up a eunuch, it describes the different types of eunuchs. For those born of the mother's womb, for those created by religious purposes, for those created by man, which were generally like your pedophiles, rapists, things like that. And those for religious purposes. They seem to forget that just on his faith alone and believing who Jesus Christ was, he come to Jesus to ask for him to heal his Pius. Now, if Jesus himself was against homosexuality or transgender people, would he have healed that person? Probably not. Mm-hmm. So Jesus himself even confirmed that there are those born differently. And a lot of what I told you there also come from Matthew, verse 19. I think it was verse 12, chapter 19, verse 12. And Jesus is speaking to his disciples on why some men don't marry. And he was speaking specifically about eunuchs. And he said, for those who are born of the mother's womb, there are those who are done for religious purposes, those who are created by man, and the other one, I can't even think of it right now. But anyway, as he was talking and explaining to his own disciples didn't quite understand his meaning. So he said, there are going to be those who don't understand. So he went on to discuss the next part of what he was discussing with his disciples. So, even Jesus himself understands. He even talks about eunuchs in, I forget which verse it is. I think it's in Philippians, if I remember right. But he actually speaks of eunuchs will have a higher place in heaven, a special place in heaven above his brothers and sisters. And, and he pretty much self-explains, he's speaking about the trans, the gays, anybody, religious people, anybody who lived that lifestyle and had a rough life, because he knew that our life was not going to be easy. Even Jesus himself knew. But he created us because he loved us. So, these people that try to use the Bible all the time, they don't want to use the whole Bible. They want to pick verses from the Bible and pick and choose how to attack somebody. But then you go back and you look at biblical scholarships who have studied the Bible for years, their whole life. And the verses that they're using as clobber verses are generally not actually a clobber verse. It's for that person. So, they can spin it any way they want. Bottom line is, it comes down to one thing. It's transphobia. They're afraid to say it. They're afraid to claim it. And the world would be so much better if we could just love your neighbor like Jesus wants you to do. Jesus isn't about hate. He's about love. And, and I don't like to throw religion into this because, but yet our politicians do it all the time. So they seem to forget that Jesus is about love. He's not about hate.
The Ethiopian eunuch story, I'm looking it up right now, Amy, and I wasn't familiar with it. It's in Acts 8. It's a well-known example of God's inclusive love. While the Bible mentions eunuchs in other contexts, the account of Philip baptizing the eunuch in Acts 8 stands out as a powerful illustration of the gospel message of Jesus being extended to all, regardless of their social status or physical condition. And it is sad that I don't know how Christianity in this country has become. It seems it's become very militant. It's become almost a Christofascism, a militant form of Christianity, and that is the antithesis of Jesus' love. We are to welcome the stranger at the gate, those we don't understand, those who we don't know. That's Jesus' love. Just because we don't understand something doesn't mean it's wrong, doesn't mean it's evil, and doesn't mean that the people who we don't understand we should not love as ourselves. And, so also, I had mentioned to you Representative Hartzler. So, I had also mentioned the 2016 RAND independent study that stated how much gender-affirming surgeries would cost in 2016 for a year. Trump was criticized for making statements that contradicted the conclusions of the RAND study. And RAND is very well respected. That's a very well-respected independent organization. Political commentator, right. Yeah, absolutely. And we all know that. Political commentator Richard Kim observed President Trump's tweets were a quote-unquote a sop to the far-right evangelical faction in the House of Representatives, which were led by then Representative Hartzler, who had threatened, this was what was going on, threatened to the funding for President Trump's planned United States-Mexico border wall if the military continued to spend health care funds for medical treatment of gender dysphoria. So I want my wall. Let's take the money away for gender-affirming treatments. This evangelical Christian congressperson. Now let's make sure that we make a deal here so that my wall is not threatened. So we're throwing people's lives, many people who have been serving already honorably, we're throwing their lives under the bus so that we can build a wall. So this type of bargaining with people's lives. When we have politicians who serve us and they're doing that, are they really serving us? Steve?
So, so to go back to the the bill that they were trying to pass, the ban on gender affirming care while in the military, I think it goes back to what we kind of talked to, that catch-22. If it's a disorder, then insurance will pay for it. If it's an elective, insurance won't. So then what is it? Is it a disorder? And if it is, then insurance can cover it. But then, I know people have stuff are in the military, but if they show signs of that disorder, whether it's anorexia, bipolar, they do get medically discharged, right? That's what's supposed to happen. Okay. And
if they cannot carry out the duties of being a service member in their respective MOS, yes. Yeah. Not just by virtue of that. Yeah. I could agree with that. Yeah. But it's that catch-22. So is it a disorder or is it not? So I don't know. And I'm completely honest with this. I don't know. I'm going off of things that I'm reading. I mean, this was just really opened up in 2016 when President Obama opened it up. So a lot of these studies are really fresh. Then Defense Secretary Ashton Carter, when that actually came into being in 2016 with the Obama administration. Yes, and so okay, we all know insurance companies are going to do whatever they can to not pay. Right. There are all kinds of classifications.
That
all
I think
kinds
we
of
can all agree on.
Right. So right. And so as a father of, I think, two transgender children.
So I had two.
I have a question for you.
Yeah, true.
So would you say that their status as transgender human beings is an elective? Or is just who they are, and and any kind of treatment to help them be who they really are should be covered like any other medical treatment.
So
say they had clinical depression.
So
do they need help with clinical? Should they be denied help for clinical depression?
And you know what? And that is a great question. And
I'm not equating.
I think a lot of people.
And let me clarify this. I am not equating. I'm not saying at all. Let me clarify this: that clinical depression is in the same status as transgender. That's not at all what I'm saying. I'm just talking about care now.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I had one that they did think that they were transgender, and they were under 18, and wanted to shave their head. I said, no, let's just wait, right? Figure out if this is what you want. They wanted to go on hormones. I said no. Okay. And obviously we did this as a family. It's not like I just did it. My wife was involved. Everybody was involved. So I said no. I didn't want them to go through something that could potentially have long-term effects until they were at least of the age where they could maturely look at it and think for themselves, right? If a 13-year-old's coming to me and telling me that they want to go on hormones because they think something different, my answer was no. I don't agree with that.
Did you consult a medical professional about that?
So they did do some counseling, but I'll be honest with you, regardless of what that counselor said, I wasn't going to do it. And that's just my perspective. That's just my, I'm not saying that's what everybody, but...
Did your wife agree with that decision? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening with this child?
After 2 years, they didn't think they were transgender anymore.
Okay.
And
they didn't think they were transgender?
Nope.
No. And what about your other child?
So, the other one has, we've talked about it a little bit, but that's as far as it's gone so far. So,
what's the age of your child?
I'd rather not say that one.
Okay.
But, yeah, so we'll see. Okay. We'll see what happens with that one. But, yeah, I don't think that, and I'll be honest, that I don't think, you should be going to medically doing anything before you're 18 anything unless you have to, because I feel like...
Did you know that was the federal law already in place, that you can't have a gender-affirming surgery until you're 18 years of age?
Oh, no, I didn't even know.
And that's been in place for years.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of misinformation out there. There's been so much terrible disinformation that parents are letting their children have gender-affirming surgeries at the age of 7 and 8. Could you address that, Amy, please?
Yeah, that misinformation went around right before the election, and a lot of people were claiming their child was having gender-affirming surgery at 7. Okay, number one, if you're a parent and you're allowing your child to have gender-affirming surgery at 7, you're only going to do damage, because they haven't developed at all yet. Their body has not developed, so they can't handle that kind of a surgery at 7 years of age. Puberty blockers, they usually start those around 12, 13 years of age, sometimes a little older, depending upon how far along you are in your treatments, because you have to seek a mental health professional and see them. I think it's a minimum of 2 years as a teenager in order to start puberty blockers, which are 100% reversible in most cases. You can even start hormones and still be reversible. All that information that has been delved out and shoved out so people would read it and think that's the truth was wrong. And if people actually did their study, they would find that it's not true. The world, I don't know if you ever heard of YPATH, the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. There's a lot of information on their website. If you ever get a chance to go look it up, there's so much there that they use it for gender-affirming surgeries, because a lot of insurances won't cover your surgery if they don't use the YPATH standards. And that's what helps a lot of the trans get their surgeries approved, is through YPATH. But the misinformation on the kids, there's so much information out there. Talk to a professional, talk to a doctor. Don't look at what you find on the internet or hear from other people, because most of the times it's wrong. It's misinformation.
Yeah. And what really doesn't help is when we have lawmakers. I'm going to bring this up. I was very, very disgusted when the Attorney General of Indiana on April Fool's Day. Did you see this, Steve? He posted, Attorney General Todd Rokita. This is doing so much harm. On April Fool's Day on his official Facebook page, posted a photo of 2 photos side by side. One of the pride flag with transgender flag in the corner, and then another flag, don't tread on me, don't take my guns, basically. And he said, I'm going to paraphrase now because I'm not really looking at it, but he said, April Fool's Day, you thought I went woke, in saying that basically he was going to put the pride flag with the little transgender flag on it in the State House in place of the flag.
He did not.
He did. He actually, the Attorney General of the state of Indiana did this. And by the way, it's the comments on this post from people from every walk of life, from the entire spectrum of the political spectrum. There were people, Republican, Democrat, and everything in between. A lot of people that were members of the bar saying, "Sir, you are a disgrace to your profession," and they're right. And what does that do? That enforces that suicide of transgender and LGBTQ folks. We don't need that. We don't need that in this state.
I think if he didn't agree with it, he should have just not commented.
Well, he's in a position of authority. That's the Attorney General of the state.
Everybody's going to have their opinions on different things. If it's not affecting you, I don't really think you should be commenting on it.
Absolutely, just the hatefulness of it. Just absolute the hate, and we got to get ourselves together here, and start working together. And Jesus' love, as Amy was saying, is this really those professing to be Christian right now? Are you really professing and living Jesus' love, or are you excluding people? So. But anyway, we'll continue this conversation. This is going to be this is the first installment of this topic, and we'll certainly have more discussions about this and get into some more discussion on this topic. So, Amy, before we close, do you have anything that you wanted to? What do you want people to know about you? And before you speak, I want to say thank you for your selfless service for our enduring freedom as a CB. I knew CBs when I was in the Marine Corps. I did a TAD at the Instructional Management School at Camp Pendleton in California, and we ran with CBs at 0430 every morning. That's a beautiful base, by the way. I mean, it was before sunrise, and the coyotes were all coming out. We could see their eyes looking at us. It was beautiful, and I had a group of CBs that were there at the time that we were doing our instructional management training, and I'll never forget the CBs, how hard they worked and the ethic that they had, and they kind of took it. We were in our 20s. We were young kids, and these were gentlemen that were at least 40, probably 45, something in 50, and they took us under their wings, and they were just so wonderful. Those are my memories of CBs. But what can you leave us? What can you leave us with? What do you want everyone to know about Amy?
Well, I've had a pretty good life being trans. I've had my ups and downs. There's always going to be people. It doesn't matter what walk of life you walk, whether you're trans, straight, lesbian, gay. It doesn't really matter. There's always going to be somebody out there that hates you because that's all they know how to do. You have to know that as a person, you have to be happy with yourself. And if you're not happy, do what you got to do to make yourself happy. For myself, making myself happy was finally being the person that I was meant to be at birth. And I knew that it was going to take a lot of people some time to understand where I was at. It's not an easy thing to do for many people. Being trans is not for the weak-minded. Because I've seen many of them break from some of the stress, some of the headaches that people come back at you. You have to. I used to hear from a lot of girls say, "Oh, I've got to be passable before I can go out or before I can transition." Well, passable is just a term that they think they need to be. It's all about confidence, and once you learn to be confident in who you are. I walk in a place now and I act like I own the place. And, I don't have anybody in that place look down on me at all. And I think that's the best thing I can give any trans out there who's struggling with where they're going in life. Don't worry about being passable. Worry about being confident in who you are. And that goes for anybody in life. You have to be confident in who you are and what you are before you can make anybody else happy. I'm just a simple person. I just want to live my life. I just want to be happy. I don't want my government stepping in and telling me that I have to live this way or I have to do that way, or I'm sorry, you can't be a female anymore on your driver's license or on your federal paperwork. We're going to make you male, and we're going to make you back to your birth name because that's where you were. Well, everybody has an opinion, and everybody has, I probably shouldn't say that on a podcast, so I think I'll keep that second part PG.
We know where you're going with that, yeah.
Yeah, so, and it looks like we found a whole bunch of them. But, just be happy. Love your people, love your friends. Don't be afraid to reach out and ask people questions. That's how we learn about people in general. You generally ask questions, like think the first time you met your wife or your husband, you started talking to them, you started asking questions. So how is that any different about learning about a transgender person? If you don't know something, ask them. Most of us will jump at the chance to help educate, because without education, people don't truly know what we go through.
Amen. My future son-in-law is a trans man, and he's frightened right now. He's terrified at what's happening. People are being taken off of the streets and put into detainment simply for having alternative views to the administration. So, I mean, are we going to start getting kidnapped because we support transgender folks? Who knows? He's frightened right now. So I hope we can all just live Jesus's love. That's what we need to do. I do want to share one thing. There's the sergeant major who I'm not at the liberty. You and I discussed this privately on the phone, Amy, and I've told you about this too, Steve. I know a currently serving sergeant major in the U.S. Army National Guard. He oversees a battalion. He's a battalion chief, and he's a white cisgendered heterosexual male with over 20 years of service, right, in the military. And he can't understand why there is such a attack on transgender folks, because they do such a wonderful. They risk their lives. They selflessly serve. They're integrated into all units. They're in combat units. They serve, and our numbers are already down. You keep hearing all of these claims that we don't have a ready enough service, and we need to have more enlistments. Well, why throw 10,000 people or so, approximately? Nobody really knows exactly how many transgender folks are in the military. There's conflicting data on that, but it's probably around 10,000 so, by most accounts, give or take. Why would you remove them when they're doing a good job? And I asked if I could quote this gentleman, but I didn't have that permission. I'm paraphrasing what he told me a couple months ago. So, yeah, why are we making this a weaker force rather than a stronger force? That is my personal opinion, and that's my opinion from what I've seen. But everybody do your fact checks. Don't look at what's on the media. If you don't understand something, go to the source. We all may know of transgender folks, but do we really all know transgender folks? Get to know someone. That's what's really going to, I think, heal our hearts. If we stop all this fighting online and all this craziness and all this anonymous cyber bullying, and it's easy to go behind the cyber curtains and just say, "Oh, you're terrible, you're disgusting, you're going to hell." Do you know who you're talking to? Do you have any idea who you're talking to? Because you might be talking to somebody who knows somebody that you know. You might be talking to somebody who loves somebody that you love. We're all connected. So, Steve, any closing thoughts?
Thank you for being on. We appreciate you coming on and being open and honest, and telling your experiences in your life. I don't know how I really feel about this yet. I'll be honest with you. I encourage everybody to do your own research and see how you really feel about it. I'll be honest. I think you opened my eyes to some things today, so I appreciate that. I think it's a good conversation.
Thank you for your honesty. And Amy, thank you for your courage. Thank you for your courage. We'll have you on again and on the show. And again, thank you very much for your service, and you're continuing to serve, and you're doing it courageously. And we wish you the best. We'll be in touch, and I'll let you know when this podcast drops. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I'm currently with the state leadership of the Indiana 5051. We also have a veterans group that myself and Brian Jonason have started for a lot of the veterans to come in. With all the veterans benefits that are being attacked, we've stepped up and we're fighting. We're fighting our government. We're using our First Amendment right. The president said that transgender can no longer serve in the military. I decided to put my uniform back on and go to the protest. And by doing so, it made a big step in the direction where I'm going. I've become a face. I've become a voice for a lot of trans vets. And I don't plan on taking that uniform off anytime soon. I took my oath seriously when I joined the military, and I will do it until the day that I die.
And I do recall seeing a photo of you with Blythe Potter inverting the U.S. colors because we are a nation in distress. And that was the topic of previous podcast that when we were talking about the cuts to the VA, a Missouri First Sergeant, Missouri National Guardswoman, Joy Garver, finding out she was fired through an email, got in her truck. The plan was to drive off a bridge and take her life. She saw the VA hospital out of the corner of her eye, and she stopped in there instead to get some help. And then she made a statement by inverting her flag without saying a word. So, we're in a nation in distress, and we'll continue this conversation. Before we say goodbye, let everybody know how they can get a hold of your organization. And do you have an email or phone number?
I know they have a. There's a Facebook group page. It's Indiana 5051, or you can actually go to Veterans 5051, or no, it's 5051 Indiana Veterans. I think it is on Facebook, and that's our Facebook page. More welcome to join either one of those. And if you want to join in, help out, more than welcome. We're looking for people to help us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Yes. So you have a wonderful day, and we'll be talking with you soon. And thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, thanks for having me on.
All right. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Well, that was a very honest, authentic conversation, and I thank you for being, that's all we can do is be our authentic selves.
That's it. All you do is ask questions.
Just like transgender folks are being their authentic selves, right? And we have to educate each other and do our own due diligence and find out.
We're not all going to agree.
Yeah. No.
So it's good to get other people's perspectives.
Right.
It's really good.
Other perspectives educate ours. Yeah. So, all right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today, and we'll be talking with you soon. This is the United States of America. Let's go out there and be great. Make it a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Hoorah.
Hoorah.
You've been listening to Veterans Views podcast from the JED TV studios on the campus of Purdue Northwest in Hammond, Indiana. Thank you for listening.